Thank you so much. And as I did manage to connect with a few people in the room, not as many as I used to when I attend as a guest, but what I've learned is some of our audience today, you've got properties possibly in your own name, maybe in your company name, or mix of both. And since we have this amazing panel, if we could ask you, how the recent changes in legislation and in regulations impacting property investing?
So which regulations?
So recent regulations, so like Section 24, for example.
Well, I think since Section 24, it's really changed things now. If you're serious about property, you're doing it as a business, then you're doing it in a limited company. That is the default. It is all, and because that is the default, mortgage companies are basically favoring that as the vehicle that they want to lend to. And arguably, you get more affordability criteria with mortgages in limited company names than you do personally, particularly with 5-year fixed rates and all of that. So anyone that's serious about property and generating a business out of it is doing it in a limited company. I think the other thing to bear in mind with this is when people invested in their own names, what people reported was a profit and loss account every year on their tax returns. When you have a company, you're suddenly producing a balance sheet that you're reporting. And that gives a certain amount of discipline, but it also gives some options, if you like, for financing the whole picture, as opposed to just individual properties, which is what sole trader property investors are stuck with.
Anyone would like to add anything to it?
Well, I believe it's LTD company have more advantages than buying properties on your own name. The reason only why I bought my first properties is only because I was lack of knowledge, and LTD was like a big thing for me, and things about taxes was like terrifying me. And so as soon as I find out how the things work, from that day I was just purchasing properties on LTD companies. So basically you have like tax advantages. And also, there are many gaps you can use for yourself, and I will not explain what kind of gaps, but for example, mileages you can use when you're looking for new properties. You can add some cost to your company, like I don't know, £5,000 because you have so many miles between your houses. So there are many advantages about taxes with LTD companies comparing to buying them on private name. So it's just simple answer. Just do it properly on LTD.
Well, thank you, David. But how about we can't give a financial advice to any one of you. You should seek a financial specialist for your own circumstances. But how about if in the room we have people who have a quite substantial portfolio in their own name? What, from your experience, what would you have done?
Well, they can still transfer that to LTD company. That's it.
There's associated costs with that. So
yes, stamp duty, land tax. So they need to sit down and start calculating what it's going to be more profitable for them, and or they can just sell all portfolio to me. So that's going to be easier.
Thank you.
If people have got portfolios and they've got mortgages on them, basically it's a greater cost to keep them in your own name, because you can't claim that mortgage interest, which is your largest cost, against your taxable profit. So it's ludicrous, quite frankly. So if you're operating it as a business, there are ways in which you can transfer your portfolio into a limited company without having to remortgage, without having to pay stamp duty if you operate as a partnership, and without having to, because it's basically a sale, it's not a transfer. You sell the properties that you own individually to your limited company, and you can do so without having to pay that capital gains tax on that sale. So this is something that specialist tax advisors are very, very well equipped with doing it. Before 2015, they were larger landlords who were incorporating their portfolios, but they tended to be much larger landlords, and they had to go to very big accountancy practices and pretty much spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on the advice. Because of Section 24, what's happened is most landlords need to do it, quite frankly, And that's why that advice has become commoditized and therefore much cheaper. So I don't really accept that it's expensive at all. I think it's more of a cost not to do it.
I think it's an interesting point that there is an upfront cost to pay to the advisors, but it's one of those mindset things that I often talk about, in that a lot of property investors are, what's the word, tight. They don't like spending money. And what they do is they look at the cost of something and they don't look at the value. In the same way, so there's a cost to get proper advice. But as Ranjan said, actually, the value is just immense when you work out the amount of tax you're going to pay. If you've got a good amount of property in your own name and you've got mortgages and you're a high rate taxpayer, you are paying a lot of extra tax now. So you've got to understand you have a business, you must treat it like a business. There are investments you need to make, and that's the way you should see it. And if you treat what you do as a business, you'll make money like a business. If you treat it like a hobby, you'll probably cost you money like a hobby does.
Good point.
Some amazing advice there. You know, for me, it's also about having a limited company, the ring fence and protect your stock, protect your business. And it's always been the thing for me. And, you know, what you were also saying about, you know, spending now, you should be looking at your end goal. You know, are you going to exit in 20 years? You know, is it going to be legacy wealth you're leaving for your kids? But it's all about ring fencing and protection for me, and that's why I definitely support the limited company idea.
And one thing I would say, even if you don't have a portfolio, you should learn this stuff. Because one of the things that you're going to have is at some point in your career, you're going to be talking to a high net worth, and he's going to have all this portfolio information. So I always tell people, look, spend 20, 30 hours learning this stuff, understand the lingo, understand a little bit, because you're going to have a meeting, and they're going to be talking, hey, what do you do? And then they're going to explain it. And as soon as you can give a little bit of advice. So we were out in the program, and we were talking, okay, what's the mileage limit? 10,000 miles, this is the claim. And then how you can take one part of your room. As soon as you start showing people how you can reduce their tax with little things, it's amazing how they want to become your friend, yeah? I spent 30 minutes and we were bouncing little tips. And I said, okay, you do this and then it's this. And then 5 other people are coming round and it's like, okay, well, you pay yourself a salary, you make this climate, this is how you do it with the director's loan, interest, dividend. So you end up running your little tax seminar, but it's a fantastic, if you learn the words and everything of what the professionals are doing, right? This makes you just more valuable. If you can help everybody in a little way, especially with high net worths, the fact that you spent 30, 40 hours learning this stuff, right, just makes you a great conversation starter.
I completely agree with that, but I say you don't even need to spend that long. You could probably spend about an hour understanding Section 24, and if you come across landlords, and by the way, I was speaking to Mark Smith just earlier in the year, who's one of the he's one of the people who helps people move properties into a company. He was saying, I think it was something like, still only something like 10% of landlords who probably should be moving have actually moved. And I guarantee there are long-term landlords, and now some of them might have cleared their mortgages, so it's not a problem for them. But there are still lots of landlords out there who've got this problem, they don't know what to do. And as Vanish says, if you can have just a little bit more knowledge than them, even if they've got a lot more property than you can position yourself as a real expert with them. And an hour or two of understanding this stuff, you'll probably know more than the vast majority of people. And I think it's Robert Kiyosaki's got this great saying. So, Great Dad, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if you haven't read it, go and read it. He's got a saying, what you know will make you money, and what you don't know will cost you money. So investing in yourself and learning some of these things. And tax, look, let's be honest, tax is probably not the most interesting thing to learn about. But when you make lots of money, believe me, you want to learn about tax.
And tax can be very, very interesting if you learn about the opportunities. Now, I talked about a recession in my talk. Recession's a time where a lot of people, particularly older landlords, decide that it's time to cash in their chips. They don't want to wait 8, 9, 10 years for the next boom. They want to cash in their chips. Now, if you can buy individual properties, but if you buy a company which owns a few properties, then you pay the stamp duty at 0.5% because you're buying the shares in the company. So there are all sorts of different things that if you just know and educate yourself, it can add further creativity to the way you structure deals in a win-win way when you speak to vendors.
I'm a kick back when you say like that. Back when you say like that.